We're talking about music on the Jim Ferguson Sunday Show. Music. It can take you on a fantasy trip or into reality, build you up or bring you down. Sometimes the same song can do both to different people. It's an interesting matter of interpretation. The Who's record, Can't Live With You, Can't Live Without You, is a good case in point. And Bob, you were saying?
Well, I made the statement that I felt that there was more reality in that song than there was one like Mac Davis and Boogie Woogie Mommy and the Blue Suede Shoes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you explained to me your position, see, why you made the statement, and really I have to agree with your point, in the song.
Right. Now, what we're going to do, I played the Who's new record. Now, artistically, earlier, and we're going to do this for those that may just be joining us, earlier played the new Who release of Seems Like I Can't Live With You, But I Can't Live Without You. And I said, artistically, I thought it was, it's a tremendous record, but philosophically, I thought was a difficult concept to utilize or live by, and they say in the record, it's like when something happens, that's the way it's going to be forever and ever, and time, never changes it, and I can't quite accept that, because that would mean that, in anyone's life, if something happened that was bad, then the remainder of their life would be that way, and hopefully that's not the case. And Bob, you said that you've had a change now?
Well, on that point, I have to agree with you that, things possibly can get better, but really, in this song, in my opinion, it's laughs, see, because, it's just, if you listen to the words real close, they're just talking out loud, because there's people that women and men both that just stand by and let their love slip away, so they don't care. And this happens to some people, 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Right, but now what happens if somebody stands by and sees their love slip away? Don't you think that it's already slipped away?
Well, if he... Yeah, right.
Because if you really care, you're not going to let that happen.
Well,
I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's already slipped away. So maybe what we have is a person that just occasionally slips into love, but usually is not in love. And unfortunately, whomever they fall in love with is more consistent than that, and they're left standing there, in love by themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for calling, Bob.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mary, did you have a comment?
Yes, well, I think that music is really a lot easier to understand today, since there isn't, at any rate on stations like WHAS, so much music is played by people who are deliberately trying to keep people from misunderstanding the songs. Now, there are some really rough songs that have been out that people will deliberately mix things together in such a way that their words will be distorted.
Can you think of an example?
Well, I can't think of an example of particularly deliberate distortion, except in, I think there are certain acid rock type numbers. I think the Rolling Stones have done this a bit. There are some songs where, I don't know, just maybe the musicians, maybe you can understand all but one line.
Uh-huh.
And that can really be rather strange. And then, of course, there are the freaky people who like to record backwards. Like the Beatles and Rain.
Right, or the Beatles used to do.
Yes, right. And about the interpretation of the song, you seem to be having a sad trend this afternoon. Why is that? I mean, first the Gordon Lightfoot about the rainy day people, and then...
But, we get back to the interpretation of music. And in Rainy Day People, I think that's a very up song, really, because he has affixed a title to a type of person or people, namely Rainy Day People.
Yes.
But what I get out of that song is that he's talking about people that are there when you have problems, when you have a problem, you would go to a rainy day person, and that person is a person that has had this problem, or is familiar with the problem, and you can talk to him,
Right, but even in the process of sympathizing or empathizing there can be a great deal of depression.
Oh, sure, but it's better to face it than not.
Well, yes, I'm not denying that.
And it's a lot easier to face it with someone else, that has been there or that is aware of it.
Oh,
and,
yes, but you get a lot more happiness built up out of a song like, for example, Bridge Over Troubled Water, which tries to convey the same idea in a way, if I understand your meaning of Rainy Day People.
Well, I have an excellent suggestion. Why don't we go back and we'll listen to Rainy Day People, and we'll sort of dissect it. What do you think about that?
Very good idea.
Rainy day people always seem to know when it's time to call. Rainy day lovers don't hide love inside, they just pass it on.
Gordon Lightfoot, Rainy Day People. Susan, you were saying?
Just that sometimes, quite often in songs, I can't understand all of the words. I can usually get the general gist, but I'll try it, listen 3 or 4 times to a song to figure out what one particular phrase is.
Yeah.
And I can't for the life of me figure it out.
Can you understand? Is it that you can't understand the words, or you can't understand the phrase?
Well, what they're, the words, what they're saying.
I see. Well, we talked about that earlier, and that's in the mix. And what happens in a session, recording session today, is that it used to be that an artist would come in with his band, and they would all sit down and do their thing at one time. And there would be like 30 mics in a studio, and everybody would be mic'd, and they would record it in one take on one track, and that would be the master. And then in the industry, they started coming up with multi-track recording devices. And so that meant that instead of having to do it all at once, and considering the probabilities of everybody doing a perfect piece in the song, they could do it segmentally or track by track. Listen, in other words, they would lay what's called a rhythm track, or just the basic beat on one track, and then they would back that up and listen to that and record on another track the next piece of business, whether it's a guitar solo or whatever. And it's in a form like constructing a song where they keep laying tracks and tracks and tracks until, depending on how involved it is, maybe 8 tracks, 16. They have 32s. They even have 60-track recorders. But anyway, they can build it like building blocks, and it still gets back even after they have all the tracks and they have them all perfect. And many of those tracks, it takes 10, maybe 15 tries to get just that exact thing that they wanted. But it gets down to the final thing, which is a mix. And today, everything is mixed either like quad, 4-channel, 2-channel, and it gets it depends on the producer. All right, he is in charge. You have an engineer, which actually does the physical mixing, but the producer determines exactly how loud the lyrics are in relation to the music. And sometimes after you hear a song over and over and over and over and over again, which the producer does, he knows the words,
Right.
He even if he didn't hear them, he would know the words,
Yeah.
So I think sometimes he forgets that other people have never had the opportunity of hearing what's called a rough mix, which is the lyric is way up front and the background is way down, and you're just listening to the correctness of the lead vocalist, say. All right. They haven't had that opportunity to hear it in the clear, as it was, and know what the words are supposed to be. So then when the mix comes, he doesn't want to leave the lead vocal what's called naked or way up above the background. The background instrumentation is supposed to give body to the lead vocalist, to give the lead vocalist more strength and to emphasize what the lead vocal is doing, you know. And so when he mixes it down, I think the tendency is to bury it.
Drowned it.
Yeah, trying to get that background up enough to give the lead vocal body and additional punch.
Right.
So I think that may be part of the problem that we're having today. And there's another thing too, and that is when you take a stereo mix and you come down, like dub it down to mono, or you're listening on a mono phonograph, when the two stereo channels combine, a phenomena occurs which is called additive effect, and that is that, well, in stereo, the left and the right are one thing. When you combine them together monorally, some of the things will add, and others won't. And if your background adds and your lead vocal doesn't, then again you have that thing of the lead vocal is buried back down, you know, under. So I think that's part of the problem that we're having today in not being able to understand the lead vocal.
Yeah, I think another thing too probably is they're so interested, maybe not in this particular song, but in creating new musical effects, using different instruments different ways that they've never been used before, that they don't really care that much about the words.
Right, and also that in some cases lyrics are used only almost like an instrument.
Right.
You know, that it is you play the lead vocal just like you would a guitar. That it's there, not necessarily for the words, but just for the effect of the vocal. I think Janis Joplin did a lot of that, to where it wasn't what she was saying, but how she was saying it, that made the song. Susie, thanks for calling. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We have been searching for a particular recorded song by Helen Reddy called Angie Baby. This is back into our thing of talking about music, you know, and lyrics of music. And I want you to listen now, people, to the words of this song very closely now. And I'd like for you to give me your interpretation of what the song's all about, okay?
You live your life in the songs you hear on the rock and roll radio. Well,
Discussing music this afternoon on the Jim Ferguson Show. Barb, you were talking about Helen Reddy's Angie Baby?
Yes. Well, I tell you, I just feel like she spells out pretty clearly in the record that this gal has an emotional disorder. You know, the folks say to take her out of school, and she starts to live in a fantasy world,
right,
where she imagines everything. Well, then in the second part of the record, I think you can understand it fairly well. But then when the neighborhood boy enters into it, to me at that point it becomes sort of a science fiction type of thing. You know, because it comes out in the headlines of the paper, boy disappears, you know, no trace of him, what have you. It's sort of like the electronic waves have absorbed him, you know.
Or perhaps she ceased living in a fantasy world and really did him in.
Well, now that's true, but it says that she has this radio by her side and someone who satisfies her whenever she wants. I don't.
Maybe the boy's in her closet or something.
Well, I just think he's electronically absorbed, and upon demand, she can just call him forth, you know.
I see. That's an interesting concept.
Well, just a thought, you know.
Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. She once was a true love of mine.
Simon and Garfunkel and Scarborough Fair, wherever it may be, perhaps a state of mind, who knows, I don't know. We're talking about music and listening to lyrics this afternoon, perhaps just a little bit more than normal, you know. I think we're talking earlier about exposure to music, and sometimes we might not pay as much attention to music as we should lyrically, because there's a wealth of information and communication in the lyrics, not just the melody line, as it were. Susan, you were saying what now?
I once made a comment to a friend that I liked the song, but I didn't understand what Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme had to do with anything. And she said that in the country, when they had country fairs, you know, when that was the big thing, that girls used to wear parsley or sage, one of those, you know, things in their hair.
In their hair?
Decoration.
In their hair,
right?
As an ornament.
Decoration, you know, instead of a bow or something, they'd wear that. And the point of the song was that this guy was remembering back when he was living in the country, and the big thing was the country fair, and the girl must have worn that stuff in her hair, and he, like, you know, was remembering it fondly, and that's why he says, you know, remember me, the one who lives there, and that. He kind of wanted to go back in a way because he wanted to buy an acre of land and all that. So that was her thought on what it was.
What type of feeling do you get out of that song? Emotional type thing?
Oh, nice, quiet, relaxed evening is what it reminds me of.
Now, because of tempo, you know, we usually like associate sadness with slow tempo, you know. Do you feel sad about that song?
No, I don't. Just a relaxed feeling.
It was
sad.
Yeah.
Remembering, nostalgic type of thing.
It was in The Graduate, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you associate any of the movie with that song at all?
No. I think probably because I heard the song before I saw the movie. I think that has a lot to do with the song.
Yeah, like Mrs. Robinson, all right? There's no way that you can hear that without, you know, recalling the movie and parts of the movie. But with that particular tune, I was curious if, you know, if you might associate that with any of the movie.
No, I don't, not really.
Very good.
Okay.
Susan, thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We've been talking about music, all different aspects of music, from the recording of it, the listening interpretation of it. And Helen, what was your thought now?
Well, the reason I didn't want it aired is that what I have to say might offend some people.
Okay, but you are on the air now, Helen. So
I tried to get you back.
Yeah?
But what I have to say, I was listening to Angie Baby.
Yeah, speak up just a little bit.
I was listening to Angie Baby.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good example of sick lyrics and the erratic music we've been deluged with for years now. And I feel it has been perpetrated on us by subversives who are trying to infiltrate every aspect of our social, political, and economic life.
Yeah.
And the very fact that this music is accepted by so many seems to reflect a nation of sick minds, really.
Yeah,
and it's sheer air pollution.
Yeah, or, you know, all throughout history, music has reflected what is happening in society, and usually not the other way around. So
the thing of it is, as I say, I feel that throughout the centuries too, I mean, there have been subversives, and I'm using this term, and whether it be with music, art, any of the cultural, you know, aspects of life, or political.
Are we saying political subversiveness?
Oh, I'm saying that they have infiltrated all of the aspects of our living. And
but when we say they, though, who are we talking about?
Well, you know what people say, that's weird.
Yeah.
But really, the music now, you get too bogged down with noise. It's really not music. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can understand your viewpoint. But again, you know, what we're talking about earlier is that every piece of music is interpreted, you know, and it's an individual thing.
Right.
Now, I could pull...
I don't feel that I'm alone.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't feel that I'm alone. I have found others, but there are many, many others, you know, that go in for this loud rock and noise.
Right.
And I say that this loud rocking noise that doesn't have any rhyme and reason, you know, is accepted by people who, I don't feel I'm a sick one.
Everybody's, strange but me, right?
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Listen, Helen, I want to tell you something now. I have a piece of music here. This, we're talking about conspiracies. This individual, this artist, is probably part of the greatest conspiracy in the world. This man has proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that age is nebulous. It's what you got to say.
Anytime you need me, babe, just call. I'll be there. Call and see what a good friend can be when you need someone to care. There's a certain thing about
Frank Sinatra. Ageless, timeless Frank Sinatra. Tom, we're talking about music.
Yes, good afternoon, Jim.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to comment on is some people said a minute ago that the music of today doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and there's a lot of noise. Well, some of it is. But if you will look around or listen around, the music of today is far more complicated. I'm talking about commercial music now, the top 40 in the country.
Right.
It's far more complicated at this stage of the game than it's ever been before, you see. I'm a musician. I play music, and this is something we've found out that it takes a lot more effort to work up material these days because there are so many complex chord progressions and everything being used. And another factor that this lady brought up a minute ago was that she didn't think the music sounded like anything to her. Well, back in high school, we had music appreciation. One of the things they made us listen to were some Gregorian chants.
Yeah.
And to me, they just didn't sound like anything. Hollering and beating on drums and everything. But these people got off on that, you see.
Yeah.
And I imagine they get off of it just as much as we do the music of today. And I dare say that if I ever get married and have children, they're going to be digging on music that I think is senseless.
Right, probably so. Probably so. It gets back to what you look for in music.
It's just,
It gets back to what you look for or what you appreciate in music.
And I think that as far as what music is primarily created and everything for a person's enjoyment, those of us who play music, of course, we get a certain amount of relief, and it's kind of a escape mechanism, I guess you could say, to put forth our feelings, whether we're playing our own compositions or other people's. But what I'm getting at is that I think you really can't put down someone because they like something a little bit different than you do.
Right.
Because what they like, you may be completely out of tune.
I've got a question for you, Tom. Now, do you think that the music today accurately reflects what's happening in society today?
Yes, I do. I think it always has. You know, people say, well, there's so much sex in music these days. There's so much talk about corruption and everything. But look back, back in the music of the 30s and 40s, it wasn't as pronounced back then, but it was there. It wasn't as open, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I was listening to Joe Stafford, right? About a week ago, I was listening to Joe Stafford, and the song was "Make Love to Me."
Yeah.
And I never really thought about that before.
When you get right, that's not too much different from Marvin Gaye's "Let's Get It On," is it?
Right. No.
It's in a different form.
That's right.
Because 95% of the music does talk about love, I guess because it's a popular topic among everybody. And I'm not down in that.
Well, outside of being the greatest thing in the world,
But I don't know. I just think that people could be a little bit more open-minded, not only about music, but everything. I think we could understand each other a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Is that glitter, or you think that's true?
Well, I like personally all types of music. I tried to psych out what it's all about. What was in mind when it was put together. What was the idea behind it? And then sometimes I get that all screwed up because it means something to me. So then I don't care what the writer was trying to say. It's what I make out of it.
I think that's what constitutes a good writer too, Jim, because his song, what means something to him may mean completely something else to someone else.
Yeah.
But it's that vocal point there that makes it a good song, because it can relate to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I like the rock and roll music of today, is because it's such a happy sound. It always has been, for the most part. And that's why people, I think, really enjoy it, because they can relate to it. It's something that everybody can relate to. And I read an article not too long ago that said that more money was spent on the purchase of rock music and rock-affiliated music than any other type of music that's put out on the market today. It's classics, the oldies, gospel, everything. So regardless of whether or not you really like it or not, somebody is doing something right, because it's making a big success.
Right. We were talking again about music reflecting the mood of society, perhaps. And so many songs today they seem to be in one bag or the other, like they're emotional, problematical, love life, whatever, you know. Or the other ones are like Mac Davis, Don't Get Hooked on Me, you know, where it's isolated from life or reality, you know. And I was just curious, I assume that you probably play in a night spot or something like that.
Yes, we've done quite a different array of different types of situations.
When you get requests for songs, what type are they primarily?
Depending on the group of people that you play for, we're kind of fortunate in the respect that we can kind of span the spectrum. We play for teen dances as well as some of the, I don't want to say older people, because like I said before, it's a frame of mind, but
right.
You know, the people who've been around longer and have heard different kinds of music.
But it keeps you in bread.
Yeah, people like to hear things they know, because primarily all about.
Very good, Tom. Thanks for calling.
I really enjoyed it, Jim. I think you got a good thing going here, man.